Hi and welcome to another video, part of this series where we're building an e-commerce website with Django and React. If you'd like to follow along, you'll just need to clone or download the Django React e-commerce GitHub project. The link is in the description of this video. And once you have this, we can get started. Before we get into this, we just released our new course where we build a software as a service with the Django REST framework and React. We cover everything from scratch all the way to deploying. So if you're interested in more advanced and in-depth Django courses, then head over to our website, justdjango.com. The link is in the description of this video, and otherwise enjoy this one. So in the last one, we added a user profile where you can update your billing address and your shipping address. And this is the second part of the video addressing this logic. So if you haven't watched the first one, make sure you've watched that because this logic is going to be following on from there. And where we left off was we could fill in this form. We specify all of these fields, click save, and that will update our either shipping address or our billing address. And right now we have this as our billing address, as the last one we created. And what we want to do is just add functionality to make sure that if we go to checkout, so this is our order summary, and we hit checkout, right now it's taking us to complete our order. We should have some sort of logic that is preventing us from submitting or completing the purchase without having entered any billing address or shipping address or having that attached to our profile. So what we're going to do is, if we just go back there, we're just going to add basic conditions here to check by fetching the user's addresses and seeing if they don't have any, then we won't show this form here to enter your card number. Instead, we'll just display some text or a button that can redirect you to the profile, and it will just say that you don't have any addresses linked to your profile, so please go and create those addresses, and then you can go and create them in the profile. And once you actually have them, then this part of the UI will then open up and you will then be able to enter your card number and proceed. So again, there's many ways of doing this. We could add a bunch of different forms and say you have the following addresses to your profile. Would you like to use this one, or would you like to add a new address or use a one-time address? So there's many ways you can do it, but we're just going to do it in a simple way and make sure that you have at least an address here that is specified as your default address. We can go and jump in the code and head over to the checkout component. So if we go to source, and I'll just bring this across like that. So we're going to go into containers and we can go to the checkout. So this is where this form is showing up to complete the purchase. What we want to do is add a method on here, which is going to be called in the component.mount method. So just like handle fetch order, we're going to have handle fetch addresses. And this is going to do basically what this is doing. It's going to fetch the user's addresses. So we're going to need an address URL. If we just go and check our constants, we have this address list URL, and here we have to pass in an address type. So what we're going to do is pass two requests actually. We're going to have fetch billing addresses, and we're going to have fetch shipping addresses. So then we need to import the address URL here at the top. And then we're going to use that in our methods here. So we'll get address list URL. This takes in an address type, which we're going to say is B for billing. And then address list URL here is going to take in S for shipping. Then we can set the state of billing addresses like that. And we can set the state here as the shipping addresses. Then what I'm going to do is just get rid of all of those, and we can just set the state like that, and we can get rid of all of that as well. So now what we can do is we can grab these two variables and we can come into our render method and just log them out. So we'll just console.log, and it's going to be billing address and shipping address. Okay, so we can come here, inspect, and okay, they're not defined, right? We just need to pass them in here. Okay. Okay, so we're just getting some console logs there on line 38 that we can just remove as well. So that's these here. And of course we need to call this.handle fetch billing addresses and handle fetch shipping addresses. Okay, you can come back here. And so line 219, we're getting a list that has one entry, and there we can see that information. So it's a billing address, it's in Australia, and all of the rest of the info. And then the shipping addresses, we don't have any, so hence it's an empty array. So what we want to do is check if either of these are empty, then we want to make sure that this doesn't display. If we at least have one, then we can continue. So we'll just come back here and we can go into the render method. And so here where we have, would you like to complete this purchase? We're just going to output dynamically. We'll say if the billing addresses dot length is smaller than 1, or the shipping addresses dot length is smaller than 1, then we're just going to render out, let's just put paragraph for now, and we'll say you need to add addresses. Otherwise, then we're going to display all of this. So we can wrap this in a React fragment and just wrap all of that around the button and then close that off. Now what we need to do is just make sure that these values are initialized in the state here. So shipping addresses is going to be an empty array. Billing addresses is going to be an empty array. Cool. So you need to add addresses. And what we'll do is we'll come down here and we'll say, here's a button, and we'll say add address. Or actually rather, what we can do is we can just import the link from React Router DOM. So we'll just say import link, and this is from React Router DOM. Then we can come down here and we can just put inside there, we'll just put a link like that, and we'll just put it around the add addresses part, and let's just fix all of that. Okay, then we can specify the to property, and this is just going to be /profile. Cool. So when we come back here and we hit add addresses, then it takes us to /profile, and here we are. So let's go and add a shipping address, and we'll just enter some random data here, specify a country, and we'll say make it default, hit save. Cool, there it is. Now if we go back to checkout, and so we can then just fill in the form and we'll be able to complete the order. But we also want to make sure that these addresses are linked to the order, because if we take a look at the order model, then we can see that an order has an address, which is a shipping address attached to it, and a billing address. So we need to make sure that the address is linked to the order before we actually pay for it. And we can do this in a number of ways. So if we just go back to the checkout, we can add a second form here for selecting the billing address or shipping address that you'd like to attach to the order. And again, if you don't have any options of that specific address, then the form will display some message and say you don't have any addresses, create one now in your profile. In fact, instead of using a checkbox, we can actually use a select component, and we can set the selected value of that select component to be the default address if there is one. So what I'm going to do is just open up Semantic UI React, and we can head over to the drop-down component, and we can just look at this example, or actually we can look at something like this one. So we just want to copy that, and we can close off our models here, come here to the top, and we can import the select. Then we can come down and we can get rid of billing address and shipping address there. Okay, then we can come over here, and here we're going to want to enter the new form to allow the user to select the address they want to check out with. So we can just go and paste that there for now, and I'll get rid of all of that. So we have the drop down component being the select component instead. And this const of options, I'm going to cut out, and we can just paste it here above. So we can just save that. Okay, and we can actually put a header here, and we'll just say select a billing address. And we'll have to duplicate this for the shipping address as well. So we'll say select a shipping address. Okay. So we come back and we have select shipping address and select billing address. And we're going to want to pre-populate the options here with the options that are available from your profile. So when we get that data, we'll just come here to these methods here, handle fetch billing and handle fetch shipping. Here, instead of setting the response data immediately, we want to format that data. So I'm going to say .map for each address, and we're going to return an object. We're going to have the key as address.id. We're going to have the text as the address, street address, and we'll combine it with a bunch of the other fields. So we could have street address, and we can put it like this, and then just output it dynamically. So street address, and then we can have address dot apartment address, and we can have address dot country, and then the value is going to be address dot id. Okay, then we can actually basically just copy that entire mapping statement here. We can go into the billing address, and we can do the same thing and just replace it like that. Cool. So now these billing addresses and shipping addresses are what we can use as the options for those select fields. So for the billing, it's going to be billing addresses, and this will be shipping addresses. Okay. So if we come back, now you can see we have that one option. So that address as a billing address, and this one as a shipping address. Now what we also would want to do is we want to check the length of these. So we'll say here, shipping addresses dot length greater than 0. Then we're going to render all of this. Otherwise, we can render out that paragraph, and we can just say you need to link all of that. And at the end, we can just close that off. And we'll also just close off the link component here. Okay. And inside this link, we can just put add a billing address. Okay. Then we can actually just copy all of that. And we'll just bring it to this one here. So this is going to be billing addresses.length is greater than 0. Then it's billing addresses as the select options. And you need to add a billing address, where this one is shipping address. Okay. Then here we can just say you need to add addresses before you can complete your purchase. And then we'll just get rid of this component there. So if we take a look at this now, let's see, we've got one too many, and up to this select here. So I'm just going to get rid of that. Okay, so select a billing address. There's that. Select a shipping address. There it is. So what we're doing here is, once we have the selected address and we hit the submit button, we're going to want to pass in the ID of the billing address and the ID of the shipping address, and then handle linking that to the order in the purchase view on the Django side of things. What we can also do though is in our handle set state methods, when we get this data, so in handle fetch billing and handle fetch shipping, what we can do is look for the default address if there are any. So what we can do is we'll say the selected shipping address, and what we can do is actually just add a method above here. We'll say handle get default address. It's going to take in an array of addresses, and it's going to return us either null, so no address, or it's going to return the actual address ID. So what we'll do is take in the addresses, and we're going to say that the constant filtered addresses equals addresses dot filter. For each element, we can say if element dot default. So what we can do is actually just check in our model, and we can look for the address. Default is a Boolean field. So if element dot default equals true, that means that it's a default address. So those are our filtered addresses, and we should only have one default address at a time. Then we can check if filtered addresses dot length is greater than 0. We're going to return filtered addresses where we'll access the first item in there. Otherwise, we'll just return null. Then we can use this in our selected shipping address. So we can just call this dot handle get default address of response.data. And then we can do the same thing here, where this will be the selected billing address. And we need to add these into the state here as well. So we'll set this as an empty string, and we'll add selected shipping address as an empty string as well. Then we can use these as the value in our select statements down here, these select components. So here we'll set the value, and we'll say value equals to the selected billing address. And then we'll say this value here is the selected shipping address, which we'll also need to grab from the state. So we'll just pass them in here. And we can get rid of these options here as well. We most likely could also be running into an issue by returning null here. So I'm going to return an empty string instead. And also this here is meant to be .id. So we make sure we pass the ID of the selected address. And there we go. So now it is pre-populating them with the default address. And we want to make sure that we can change those. So we'll have a handle change method for those select fields. So let's just come down here, and we can just add one handle change. Let's just see if we have that. And that handle change is for the coupon code. So what I'll do is in this one, we can just call it handle select change. And this is going to take in an event, and it's going to take in the value that we've just selected. So in here, we want to say this dot set state, and we're going to set the state of whichever component we are changing. So let's just go and see what the names of these select components are. And let's see, so this one we'll call name as billing address, and this one will be, of course, shipping address. So now we should gain access to that name in here. So what we can actually do is just console log name, and we can console log value. We could also actually just go with e.target.name. Then we need to bring this and connect it up to our select components. So we're going to say on change, which is going to equal to this dot handle select change, and then do the same thing for the other one. Okay, so if I clear this, see we're getting undefined and an empty string on 221. So that's this method here. And okay, so let's just get rid of e.target.name and instead go with just name. Then you can see we at least get billing address there as the name of the component that we're changing. But now we need to at least set the state. So this is going to be the name of the field that we are changing, which is going to be value. So we can just set the state like that. So if we come back now and I clear it, now we're getting you need to add a billing address. And okay, that means we're just changing the wrong name here. So this is not billing address, this is selected billing address, and this is selected shipping address. Okay, so now if I clear that, now I can go back and change it. So the on change is working, and that's all fine. So what we need to do now is make sure that when we actually pass in the card number and hit submit, we're going to be sending the token, but as well as the ID of the billing address or selected billing address and the ID of the shipping address. So let's come in here in our handle submit, this submit method here. Here we're passing the Stripe token as what we get from calling stripe.createToken, but we're going to want to pass in the selected billing address and selected shipping address, which we will get from the state. So let's just grab them here. So this is going to be selected billing address and selected shipping address, which equals this dot state. And then we can pass this in there just like that. So now we'll be posting that information, and we'll need to make sure that we can handle it. So if we go into the views here, and let's see, here we have the payment view. So here we're getting the token from the Stripe token. And we already had some logic here of whether we should use the default address or we should save the address. So this is going to change quite a bit. And what we'll do is we'll add the selected billing address. And this is going to come from request.data. Then we can just go and get that selected billing address like that. This will be selected shipping address, and that's going to be selected shipping address. We can actually call these the billing address ID and the shipping address ID. Then we want to get the specific address instance by just calling a get method on the ORM where the ID equals to this shipping address ID or billing address ID. So what we'll do is just get rid of that there, and we can say that the billing address equals to, and here we'll get the address, and we'll say dot objects dot get where the ID equals to the billing address ID. Then this one will be the shipping address, and it's going to be get where the shipping address ID equals the ID. So now we'll have the actual address instances. We can attach that to the order, but let's just look at this logic here. We used to be checking if we were saving the address that we're adding, whereas now we are just simply passing in the ID of the address. So we can get rid of that. I'm going to get rid of that if save method there. We can just tab this back in here. What we're doing is checking if the Stripe custom ID is an empty string, meaning we don't have a custom ID on this user profile. So if it's not an empty string and it's not none, then we retrieve the customer and we create a source for the customer using that token. Otherwise, we create that customer on the fly, create the source, attach the customer ID, and then just save the user profile there. We have the amount of the order, and what I'm going to do is get rid of the if statement there, and I'm going to comment out this first one, and we can just do a once-off charge using the token instead, create the payment, and here where we assign the payment to the order, that's fine. This is where we're going to want to add the billing address and shipping address. So we can do this right here. We can say order dot billing address equals billing address, and order dot shipping address equals shipping address. Okay, so everything's still running. So what we want to do is open up the admin. We're going to go here to our order. Right now, we can see that there's no shipping address and no billing address attached. Also no payment. So if we come back here, we're going to want to submit this. We'll just enter the dummy credit card and then just dummy information there. Then if we hit submit, let's see, we get a bad request here. So if we just go to the network and investigate the response there, we get invalid parameters, which is here if we get an invalid request error. So what I'm going to do is just say print E. Then we can just investigate that in the terminal there. So if we try this again and hit submit, and we come here, let's see, it says you cannot use a Stripe token more than once. So what I'm going to do is use this Stripe charge based on the customer instead, and we'll comment that out. What I'm also going to do is get rid of that there and put some other information, then we can hit submit. And that post request was successful. So if we come back here and refresh this, now we have a shipping address for admin, a billing address for admin, and a payment. So if we check out the shipping address, let's just go back here to addresses. We still have only these two addresses, which is fine. So it seems like the address is being added to the order correctly. Then what we can do is, because we have this message here at the top, I'm going to move it down to the bottom as well and make sure that any errors when we submit are at least set back to null so that we can see if the error actually happened again. So let's just bring this down and we'll come back into checkout. So when we post, we are posting this data. So before the post, right here, this is where I'm going to say this.setState. I'm going to set the error to null. Okay. Then we can come and grab this success message, this one here, and make sure that we bring this down all the way down to the bottom here. So I'm actually going to put it right there. Now we also get this error that if we don't have an order, we just get an error showing up here on complete your order. So instead, what I'm going to do is just redirect us back to the list of products if we don't have one. So we can do that here in the handle fetch order. So here with the order summary, instead of setting the state here, what I'm going to do is check if we have wrapped this with router, which we haven't. So we can just come to the top, and here we can say from our React router DOM, we can say import the with router package, and then we can come down and we can wrap this checkout here where we inject Stripe. I'm going to say with router, and that will give us some properties which we can then use in our method here where we fetch the order. So here we can say this .props.history.push to / let's say products. So if we come back, then it just redirects you right there. We can also fix up the drop down here as well. So if we come into the layout, then here we have the cart, and we're mapping through all of the cart items. I'm just going to refactor this a little bit and put the cart and outside of the drop down menu. That way we can actually just wrap it like that. And then here we can just say if the order items length is smaller than 1, so just over there, then we have no items. Then let's just see what this looks like. I'll also just come above here and console this out so we can see what the cart actually looks like. So we're just getting null there. So we can just say cart not equal to null. Then we'll have this drop down menu. And actually we can do that inside the drop down menu there. So like this. Then we can wrap this in a React fragment. And we'll do that like this. So if the cart is not equal to null, then what we're going to do is display the drop down items. Otherwise, we're going to want to put another drop down item, and we'll say no items in your cart. Okay, cool. So like that. That's where we're going to leave it in this video. If you've enjoyed it, leave a comment down below and let us know what you thought. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.